I'd like to welcome everybody today to the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center's Something to Talk About. We meet Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we're grateful to Fieldstone Memory Care of Bainbridge Island because Fieldstone is underwriting these regular programs. Fieldstone is offering innovative and compassionate care that's worth the wait. You can call 360-271-2530. That's 360-271-2530 to schedule a tour of Fieldstone's beautifully appointed apartments on Rolling Bay. And today, Joel Adamson is joining us. Joel is the Executive Director of Homes of Compassion, which is a nonprofit that began its work in earnest in 2018. I think you were formed in 2017, Joel. They work to fight homelessness in Kitsap County, and the goal is affordable, long-term, supportive housing for homeless people of all categories: seniors, homeless people with disabilities, homeless mothers with young children, young people who are homeless. In short, I guess we'd say the most vulnerable people who are in between circumstances. And obviously, a lot of those people are at wit's end or have mental challenges that make it hard for them to put their lives together. So I'll just start by saying, Joel, thank you so much for your work in the past 4 or 5 years, maybe longer, it seems. And tell us a little bit about the concept and how it's going. And then we'll talk a little bit about what we can do to help you and sort of what your vision of the future is as we all face this challenge of an unequal playing ground for our friends and neighbors.
Well, thank you, Reed. I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you about this subject, and because there's a lot of misinformation out there about this subject, and so I want to talk about that, especially the misinformation. Our organization, Kitsap Homes of Compassion, and we have a website with all of our details, kitsaphoc.org. Our main focus is to permanently end chronic homelessness in Kitsap County. See, homeless can be divided into 2 categories. Those that are chronically homeless, that means HUD definitions, they've been homeless for 12 months or longer, or 3 or more times in a 5-year period. And then you have people who are homeless just for a few weeks or a few months. They're just called like one-time homeless. And most homeless actually are just one-time homeless. They're just homeless for a few weeks or months while they're in between jobs or a marriage situation, divorce situation. And most of those individuals do not have, that are one-time homeless, do not have a chronic mental illness or chronic psychiatric disorder. They just fell on hard times because they're in maybe a low-paying job, they don't have savings, and it's a temporary situation. Or some of the one-time homeless, maybe they got into alcohol or drugs or something, and there's a sort of a piece of the pie that are that category. But the chronic homeless, which is only about 25% of all the homeless in the United States, and probably Kitsap County as well. Though the chronic homeless, they tend to have, about 90% of them have a chronic condition, medical condition or psychiatric condition, or serious mental illness that makes it so they're not able to work full-time. And many of them can't even work part-time, and they actually are on SSI disability income, Social Security disability, low income, but the SSI only pays them $800 a month, $700, it goes up every year. It's like $795 right now is the minimum. And with that amount of money, obviously you cannot rent anything in Kitsap County. And some of them, maybe 10 years ago they could, but prices of rental properties have more than doubled in the last 10 years, but their Social Security payments have not. And so it's created a situation where people who are not criminals, no criminal history, they are just chronically disabled, and they are very seriously disabled it's not easy to get disability in this country, obviously, if you know somebody who's tried. But these people are seriously disabled, and of no cause of their own, they are forced to be homeless. And in a country with the wealth that we have and everything, it's really cruel and inhumane that someone with, just because they are physically or mentally disabled, that they have to live on the streets, eat out of garbage cans, or they're just it's really quite a inhumane, sort of barbaric, as other countries that look at the United States see our situation. So we are here, Kitsap Homes of Compassion, to make permanent supportive housing for these chronically homeless that are on SSI disability. And we do criminal background checks. We don't take people with drug problems or a history of drug problems. These are just people that are disabled that need housing, and so we provide that.
And that how many people right now are involved in your program?
Yeah, we started 3 years ago with our first house. What we do is we rent a house, a single family home or a 3-bedroom apartment, and then we just put one person per bedroom in most of our places. And they we put a lock on the door so they get their own privacy, their own security. They can store their stuff in their bedroom, and then they share the kitchen and living room of the house. We've grown every month, adding a new house every 1 or 2 months. So we are now up to 25 shared homes with 100 bedrooms and 110 individuals. That 110 individuals that were formerly chronically homeless, that are on disability, but are now permanently housed, and they can stay in these houses for the rest of their life if they want to. But they pay a monthly fee, and that fee helps us to pay the rent on the house, because we don't own any of these houses. We lease them all from landlords and property management companies in Kitsap County. We pay all the utilities. We provide internet, so they have TV service and internet in the homes. But the fee that they pay, it depends on the price of the house and how big the room and everything. It varies from $550 to $750 a month for a room. But that doesn't cover 100% of our costs. We rely on donations and grants because we have social workers that go to the houses every week to help the residents. We have weekly house meetings. Each house has a house manager that goes to the house to facilitate a weekly meeting. And then we have social workers that meet one-on-one with those that need more care and individual services. So we have a staff, but we need volunteers because about half of our house managers are actually volunteers that just volunteer their time to go to the house once a week.
I was going to ask about that, about the ratio of paid people to volunteers, because I know that with the right kind of support, volunteers can actually help a lot of people.
That's right. Yeah, we have about 15 volunteer house managers that go to the homes and facilitate the weekly house meetings. And then we have 3 navigators that are paid. And then we have 2 mental health professionals that also go to the houses. So we have 5 full-time staff, that social workers and mental health professionals that also go to the houses and help on one-on-one situations, and also give training to the volunteer house managers. So the funding for our bookkeeper and our social workers, for the funding for the salary of all of our staff, basically that comes from grants we have from Kitsap County, the mental health program 1/10 of 1% grant, and block grants. And but it also comes from about a third of the money to pay for the salaries comes from general donations from individuals, organizations, churches, Rotary clubs, service organizations like that. Yes. So it's really a group effort. It's a community effort for us to be able to do this. It takes a village, because it takes a lot of people. These people, like I said, have very serious disabilities. And so that means they need a lot of support. We don't just put them in a house and leave them. And these are not shelters. These are permanent housing for these individuals, but they need support. They need the social workers. They need the house managers. The house managers help in conflict resolution. For deciding, people, anytime you have 3 or 4 strangers living in a shared house, even if you don't have a brain dysfunction, it's going to be difficult.
Yes.
It's even more difficult if you have a brain dysfunction. So that's why they need these individuals to help provide supports, help them deal with, and help them learn how to do conflict resolution.
My computer decided that I didn't need video, so I have disappeared momentarily. I hope I can get that set, but I have another question for you. I know that I've heard it said that, if you can get people in a housing situation, then they are in a position where they can cope with some of the other challenges. You talked about people eating out of garbage cans because they can't figure out how to survive. If you have a place where you can put food overnight or for a week, you can start to put your life together in a way that is not possible if you're living out of a shopping cart.
Exactly, Reed, you're exactly right. And this is what they have done studies, the university, UW, all the major universities of social work. They, in the last 10, 15 years, they've done many studies on this exact question that you mentioned. And that's why they've come up with a program called Housing First, because they say the first thing people need is to get housed, because if they have housing, it's very stressful to be homeless. My son, I know people that have sort of just to experience it, they actually lived on the streets for a week to experience that. And it's very stressful, it's very hard. And even for any of us, it would be very difficult to cope in that kind of a situation. Then on top of that, if you have schizophrenia, or if you have serious depression, or if you have very serious anxiety or paranoia or something, that's just going to make it much more difficult. And the folks are often victimized. When they have to live on the streets and they're disabled, mentally, intellectually disabled, the criminal element, or mainly not the homeless people, their criminal element, they live in homes, but they go out to the street and victimize the disabled who are having to live on the streets. And they are victims of crime themselves, not the perpetrators of the crime. So it is really, and just, I wasn't aware of the scope of the situation until I got into this, like you said, 4 years ago. And it is just unbelievable that this is going on, in a country like ours. It's sort of like an undeveloped country, the way the behavior, or just the policies that we have in this country, that because we could end this instantly with the proper systems and funding and permanent supportive housing. So it's just an untenable situation that we need to take responsibility for and to make an end.
So could you tell us a little bit about how you got involved?
Well, it's about 10 years ago or so. We heard that Kitsap Rescue Mission, at the time it's called Bremerton Rescue Mission, was looking for a site for a temporary camp for the homeless. And my wife and I had some land that we were going to let them use for this site. And because of the public outcry, that never actually came to fruition. But as a result of that, Kitsap County came up with some new guidelines for providing temporary emergency housing for the homeless. This was before the Kitsap Rescue Mission or the Salvation Army had overnight shelters year-round like we have right now, since the pandemic. Well, since researching that, then I did more research into it, and we came to the conclusion that we didn't need camps. that was just going to temporarily house people for a few months, because that's just kicking the can down the street a little bit, because eventually you need to find permanent housing for these individuals anyhow. So the best solution from researching it is to try to create a system of permanent housing right away, so you can move people from a homeless situation directly into permanent housing, and then so they don't live in camps, or even if the camps have nice cottages, or even if they have nice shelters, or that are, it's better that they live in a permanent, that we get a good permanent situation. And then that way, because having people moved in from temporary situation to temporary situation, that creates more trauma for the people. So living in a regular home or regular apartment, then they're not living in a cabin, not living in just a little shed. They are in a normal home, and so we came up with this idea basically about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, and we went to KCR, Kitsap Community Resources, which is the one-stop shop in Kitsap County that handles emergency housing, their housing solution center. So we met with them and we said, what do you think of this idea? This is an idea that we've come up with, leasing houses and sort of not subletting by the room, because it's not a rental situation. It's really a program. We're helping these people who are disabled. But Kitsap said, we think that's a great idea, go for it. And it took us in 2018, it took us about 3 months to finally find a landlord willing to lease us their house for this purpose. But once we did it, then other landlords saw that we have people going in there every week. The house is being maintained. It's not dangerous. It's safe. We had the other landlords then agreed to give us, lease us houses, and we pay the market rent on the house. So it's a good deal for the owner of the house. Actually, it's a better deal because we're in there every week checking on it. If you lease a house to a regular person with a 1-year lease, you're not allowed to go into the house once a week and check on it like we do. So it's a win-win situation for the owner of the house and for our organization and for these disabled people who don't deserve to be living on the street.
And do you have people across the county, or houses across the county?
Yes, we have 25 houses all the way from Port Orchard all the way to Kingston. And we have several in Poulsbo. We have about 40% in central Kitsap. And then we have a good chunk in the downtown Bremerton area. We even had a house managers who live in Bainbridge Island who are work at the hospital as social workers. They're trained social workers. They volunteered to be house managers, these women social workers on Bainbridge Island. But unfortunately, because of the rental price of apartments and houses in Bainbridge Island, we could not rent any property there at a price enough that then we could turn around and charge a monthly fee for each room and be able to pay the rent on the house. It was just prohibitively expensive on Bainbridge Island.
So what's the average rent that you have been able to pay? Just to give a sense, if somebody did have property on Bainbridge.
Yes, usually we pay about $500 per month per bedroom. So for a 5-bedroom home, we'd pay $2,500 a month. For a 4-bedroom, around $2,000 a month. And that's usually what we're able to rent houses for across Kitsap County, other than Bainbridge Island.
And do you work with agencies that are, I think of Kitsap Housing and the Bainbridge Island, the Housing Resources Bainbridge Group, and people like that, Helpline House and Fishline, to help identify people who might benefit from your wonderful service?
Yes, we do. We get referrals through with the Helpline House, the Fish Line in Poulsbo. And the main service is KCR. KCR has a Housing Solution Center. It's the one-stop shop for anyone who has a housing need in Kitsap County. And they have offices in the Fish Line, up at the Fish Line Center in Poulsbo. They have offices at Bremerton, Port Orchard. And so we have housed several people from homeless people who were homeless on Bainbridge Island, but because we could not house them on the island because of the cost, we housed them in Central Kitsap, we've housed them in Poulsbo, we've housed them in Kingston. So we are housing homeless Bainbridge Island residents, but we're just housing them in our homes that are off of the island.
And so to clarify, if I knew of somebody and was trying to help somebody, I'd refer them to KCR?
That's right. That's right. You refer them to KCR, or to KCR has an office at the Fish Line Service in Poulsbo, and KCR will then help them fill out our application, and then KCR will take their application, scan it, and email it to us. And then after that, when we get their application, we have one of our housing navigators, that's a social worker, calls that person and meets with that person and goes over what we call a housing assessment. We find out what their situation is and what their needs are. And then we try to pair them with one of our houses that would fit their needs. For example, some of our houses, all the bedrooms are upstairs. So if a person is using a walker, that would not be a good fit. So we have to look at their physical abilities as well as the housing. And I'll say most of our residents are senior citizens. Most of our residents are in the ages of 50 to 80 years old. And so it's just all the more cruel and inhumane that in the society that we live in, that our senior citizens are living on the street of no really fault of their own, that they're just physically and mentally disabled.
Yeah, well, and I do know that for people who are looking for long-term housing and they can't afford to stay in their home or are not able to, they have, often have to move for the same reason you talk about as far as affordable housing not being here on Bainbridge. Just to clarify, in case anybody isn't sure, KCR is Kitsap Community Resources, and their website is kcr.org. I want to make sure that if somebody has a question, you have an opportunity to ask it. Just open up your microphone. Sheila.
So, Joel, thank you so much for all the work you do. This is fantastic. You don't assist with folks who are having problems with alcohol and drug abuse. Is that true?
If people are especially drugs, if someone has a drug problem or has recently used drugs, that requires special services. And so we refer them to organizations that deal with people who have drug problems. There are many programs, not many, but there's at least 10 programs in Kitsap County that help people with coming off of methamphetamines and drugs like that. Because if we put someone into one of our homes that has a recent drug problem, then it could be dangerous for the other senior citizens in the home who don't have drug problems. So we require that a person not have any drugs have a clean period of 9 months before they come to us.
Wow.
And most of our people have never used drugs in their lives. So we're not a drug rehab program. We're here to help people who have physical and mental psychiatric disabilities that are homeless because of those reasons, not because of drug reasons.
Hey, Joel, Lynn Lindbergh here. Love what you do, and part of what inspired me to come listen to this is my husband and I are Bainbridge residents. We were renting, and our landlord sold the property, and we had the mental health, the means, and everything. We still ended up with the 2-week gap, and was amazed at how stressful that was. So I can't even imagine having other challenges on top of it. It would be impossible. I guess my question to you is, like, how the endless impossible question: how do we solve this? What is, like, how many of these houses do we need to really fill the need?
Well, that's a good question, Lynn, and thank you for very much for explaining that. As you've experienced the situation when you're in between houses, and a lot of our residents, they become homeless because they were in an apartment and their landlord decides to sell the house. About 25% of single family homes that were rental homes in Kitsap County have been sold because the landlords, maybe the tenants weren't paying rent or during the COVID, maybe they want to cash in on the high rental real estate market. And so the inventory has been going down because of that. Yeah, this is a big problem. Within Kitsap County, fortunately, we estimate only about 350 chronically homeless in Kitsap County, and we're housing 110 of them. And Eagle's Wings is another organization similar to ours. They're housing about 70 to 80. So there's only about maybe 150 left. So we actually feel we could reach our goal and house all of the chronic homeless at Kitsap County within the next 12 to 24 months as we continue to make new homes. 12 new homes a year is our plan. And so within the next 2 years, we plan to end chronic homelessness in Kitsap County. The problem comes with when you go to King County or Pierce County, there are thousands of mentally disabled folks there that are living on the streets, as you probably seen as you've driven through Seattle. And so we need to do construction of thousands, over 5,000 permanent supportive apartment units. And that is, and that just the construction would cost about $1 billion, which compared to other things that we spend money on in our government, that's not very much money. And then you need supportive services, social workers for those. But it can be fixed with permanent supportive housing. That's 1-bedroom apartments or studio apartments that also provide social workers to meet with the individuals once a week to help them to be able to keep their apartment. And in here we have plans to Kitsap Homes of Compassion has a contract to purchase the school in Gorse. I don't know if when you're driving through around the Gorse corridor, on the one side there's a 5-acre parcel with that used to be an old elementary school, and we have plans to purchase that for $1.5 million, and then to convert that into 50 apartments, half of them 1-bedroom and half of them studio suites. And that will provide 50 more units. And then we'll have offices of social workers that will be there. We'll have people there 24/7 to mental health professionals to help them. It's sort of like Pendleton Place. I don't know if you've heard, in also Kitsap Way, Kitsap Mental Health has under construction a 74 apartment unit building, which is going to be permanent supportive housing. Permanent supportive housing, PSH, is the answer, and so that's what they're going to provide there on that apartment building. It's going to be completed there in the next 6 months. I don't know if you've seen it when you're driving. It's right next to the freeway. It's across from the funeral home there. So that's what we need, more permanent supportive housing. Because of the shortage of rentals, it's getting more and more difficult for us to continue to be adding new rental properties every month. So we need to do construction and build some apartment buildings that are designated for people who are homeless, that have mental disabilities, and basically those that are on SSI that are homeless.
And the other thing that I'd like to talk a little bit about is, my understanding is that most people in Kitsap County who are homeless have ties here. People don't, there's often a fear that you're going to, if you provide something like what you're talking about at Gorst or Pendleton Place, you're going to somehow attract all kinds of difficult problems. Really what we're dealing with often are people who grew up here or have family here, right? I mean, these are
That's
these are
right.
Kitsap residents.
That's right. Over 90% of the people in our homes, they were born and raised in Kitsap County. These are not people that have come to Kitsap County from other places. It's our responsibility as a society to take care of those who are disabled in our county.
That's great. I'm hearing a little something beeping. If somebody's trying to comment, Julie, I see that you might be. Do you have a question?
This is the perfect place for me to chime in. I talked with you briefly, Joel, some months ago, and I'm Julie Stone. Thank you for all you've accomplished. It's just fabulous and tremendous. I have worked with seniors and folks with some disability in the community myself, and I know how energizing or how enervating it is for them to manage their health, transportation to medical, transportation to possibly mental health therapy, to the grocery store, just to manage their lives. And I have seen those folks here on Bainbridge. Fortunate ones are in some of our low-income housing here on Bainbridge. And that in itself, in the neighborhood, provides a kind of supported living for them, which is just incredibly beneficial. It keeps them independent. And what Joel does that my family very much hopes to be involved with is it provides choices to people. Because as disabilities grow, whether they're physical, mental health, or both, what I've seen over and over is it takes away choice from people. And it adds to the burden of their outlook and their ability to interact with others, to manage themselves. So we should be so grateful Joel has taken this on. And I keep telling people about it. In my own family, my adult daughter is in an adult family home situation because of need, and she would very much like to be in Kitsap County. The choices here for alternative housing are extremely limited, and Joel has really filled a hole here, and the organization needs to be supported in any way it can. So thanks again, Joel.
Well, thank you, Julie. And you're exactly right. People with disabilities need more options for housing. And a part of the problem, as Lynn had asked earlier, why do we have this problem in the first place? In the state of Washington, it's a particularly acute compared to some other places in the nation. And part of the problem is we've created our own problem ourselves with the legislation that we have right now. For example, the Washington State Legislature has these laws called the Washington State Landlord-Tenant Act. And according to that, they want to fit everybody into that box. And they say any landlord or anybody who rents any place or even pays any money for a housing, you have to follow the Landlord-Tenant Act. Well, and with all of the protections of the landlords. Well, yeah, that's really good and well if you have a normally functioning brain and you're not disabled mentally. But if you're mentally disabled and you need additional supporting services, or you might, your mental illness might, you burn down your house or you start a fire because you don't know what's safe. Well, I'll tell you what, no landlord is gonna rent you your house because you're an unsafe person, because you start fires in your house. And so you're not able so that's one of the reasons why other nonprofits don't want to do what we're doing, is because they're afraid of it, because they're going to say, oh my goodness, that's a dangerous thing because you can be sued because you're not following the Landlord-Tenant Act. And so therefore, the laws that we have created has created a system where nonprofit organizations are afraid to do what we're doing because they're afraid of being sued. And so it is really, we need some reform in our legal system to create housing that is appropriate for people with serious mental disabilities, where the organization that's creating that housing doesn't have to be afraid that they're going to be sued for not following the Landlord-Tenant Act. Our organization, we have program agreements. We don't have lease agreements with the residents. So that way we can have house meetings. That way we can do inspections to make sure they're not storing gasoline cans in their bedroom so they don't burn up their house. Because these people have serious disabilities and they need serious care, and this kind of care this kind of protection they need is to protect themselves from themselves sometimes. And so we cannot just say it fits into the Washington State Landlord-Tenant Act.
So Joel, are there, let's talk about a couple of the things. Obviously, you're in the process of trying to enact this, get this building set up along Gorse. You have ongoing needs that you probably would appreciate donations for in terms of staff and rental assistance. And it sounds like there's also a legislative component that you're working on, or at least open to. I wonder if you're finding some support from at least some of our lawmakers. Care to speak at all about that kind of ways that you could that you can most use help in this effort?
Thank you, Reed. Yeah, our donations have been down this year about 50% compared to last year. So we've had to reduce some of the hours of some of our staff, our social workers, and we've had to reduce some of our services because of our budget. So we really rely upon individuals to make donations, and on our website we have a donate button there that people can donate online. And it has the address, people could send a check, and we're a 501c3, it's tax deductible. So we are definitely in need of donations, and we require, to function, we are dependent upon the private donations. So yeah, thanks for asking that. I'm hoping, myself, I've started the UW Masters in Social Work program. I'm starting in 3 weeks, and I'm hoping to work with the professors there who have contacts in the legislature we can make changes in our state of Washington, so we can make some structural changes so that we can solve this problem and not let it just continue going like it is, because it's this untenable situation for those with disabilities. But it's a multifaceted problem. It shouldn't just be on the responsibility of, donors to make private donations to take care of the disabled of our society. Our society should pay for this out of the taxes and because the people that are making millions and billions of dollars because of the system we have, they should be paying their fair share of helping to take care, just like we pay for a military to protect our country. We should have a safety net to protect citizens, because in reality, any of us could become in this situation. We have people who have been doctors and attorneys living in our housing because they got in a car accident and they had traumatic brain injury. And if you have traumatic brain injury, your brain could be affected so that your family, it's difficult for you to live with your family. You could lose your job. You can be completely disabled. And the United States government is not going to take care of you. And so people are not really aware of how tenuous their situation, unless you have $5 million. And even if you had $5 million in the bank, if you have brain injury, you might have the freedom to blow that $5 million because the legal system may not be protecting you from managing your money properly.
Well, and the other thing that you're pointing out, Joel, is that it seems as though with a very affordable amount of care, like the people who are visiting and checking in on people with mental incapacity who are living in your houses, it doesn't take a lot of money to assure that somebody has the support they need so that things don't get out of hand, which if you don't give them that little bit of support, things can get desperately out of hand.
That's right. That's right. It could be done because there's a lot of people. Yeah, some people are very extreme. They have to be in a nursing home because they're so incapacitated. But a lot of people are in this middle ground. They just need a little bit of support to be able to maintain their housing. And so it's not very expensive to do. We're able to operate this 110 people on a very, very shoestring budget, very thin, small budget. And it's actually much cheaper than having them be homeless was costing our society more because they were going to the emergency room every couple of weeks. The police were having to take care of mental health issues. The jails were, Kitsap County Jail, 20% of the people had mental issues. Having these people in these institutions of the hospital that costs $1,000 a day or the jail that costs them, thousands of dollars a month, it's a much more expensive way to deal with this problem than dealing the way it should be dealt with by having appropriate housing for them.
So we have a question from Christina and then Julie again. Christina.
And you can hear me, correct? I undid my mute.
I hear you. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you,
All right.
Christina.
Yes, I have some experience with the disability community. And I just wanted to point out in terms of finances, people who have a recorded disability, they can only earn so much as well, right? So when you say that the government should be taking care of these people, the government has also put in a catch-22, wherein a lot of the services that they require are not subsidized or provided by the government, but you can't earn a certain amount either. Otherwise, any services that you get are cut off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's very true. I don't know, it's like $1,000 a month or $1,100 a month they're allowed to earn. And having a job is actually very important mentally. It gives people self-worth if they're able to work part-time. We actually have a program. We try to help people get jobs part-time because it's a very good thing for people's mental health to have a job. But being able to pay for this room each month, that pay the program fee themselves out of their Social Security, that gives them dignity and respect that they're not getting this for free, they're paying for it, and then they feel good about themselves, and they decorate their room, they decorate their houses. This is their home, and it's not they don't feel like they're freeloading or the government's paying their way or whatever, because they're paying out of their own Social Security income to pay for this. And so it's a lot different. They're not living in a shelter where it's free and with a congregate housing with a lot of people in the shelter. So yeah, it's important for people to be able to have their own place, to be a part, to have their own room. And yeah, I think that's probably, there needs to be some work on that legislation about if people, so that they can earn some more money, because obviously earning only $1,000 a month when you have more additional expenses too, is inappropriate.
Let's see if Julie wants to get in here.
Well, I'm so glad you brought up the whole issue of the cost to society of leaving things the way they are, separate from the humanitarian aspect of having a better quality of life. This just has to be addressed. And Joel's efforts and the organization's efforts are proving how effective it is to have it be local. I see that in our community with service agencies I've worked with. The success is because somebody sat at a desk with somebody else or on a sofa with somebody else and had a broader perspective of that person's situation. They weren't sending off forms to a program that was administered someplace else that really didn't understand that individual's situation completely. The whole business of being local isn't just cost effective, it's person effective. And we've got some wonderful communities, apartment complexes on Bainbridge, which provide some comfort just by the fact that they are a community within walls, and they create kind of their own little neighborhood within those communities. But they don't have social services available. So I see people living there with mild strokes, with maybe disabilities they've had throughout their lifetime, who don't have support with just fielding some of their issues in the community that would be of great benefit to them. And of course, we've got great organizations like HRB and Helpline, and but unless folks are coming to them, sometimes there's a lack of awareness. So having that within a home provided by or made available through a social service contact is hugely important. And the only other organization in our state which serves some of these people is DSHS. And it's really burdensome to work through their bureaucracy to get something into the home and be able to augment.
It's much easier for people to figure out what the next steps are when they're working directly with somebody that they can talk to that's available. And it seems like in your homes, having the house manager be part of that picture really helps people when they face a burden, Joel.
Yeah, that's right. Wraparound social services is key. All of the house residents, they have the cell phone number of the house manager. So if they're having, an anxiety attack or something happening during the week, or they get in an argument with somebody in the house or something, they have somebody to call. They don't have to just call 911. They have a house manager that'll call, that'll talk with them. And oftentimes it just be say, okay, if the problem maybe you can resolve, it's like, well, we can resolve this at our next house meeting that's going to be happening in 2 days. Let's meet then. Or if it's something serious, the person can go to the house and help them with it. But that's right, wraparound social services is key for this population segment, and that's what they need, and that's what they really deserve. If you have a serious disability like this, that's what you need.
So the website is Kitsap HOC, Kitsap Homes of Compassion .org, Kitsap HOC. And you're looking for volunteers. You mentioned you're looking obviously for donations, and it sounds like you've got a lot of projects on your plate. Good luck with your master's degree. That sounds like a wonderful next step for you, and very generous of you to basically dedicate your life to this.
Well, thank you, Reed. I just think we have to make changes. I've lived in other countries. I worked for corporations, international corporations. I lived outside the United States for 14 years, and other countries, developed nations, are able to handle their mentally and physically disabled population without having them live on the street. So I don't see why the United States should be doing any worse than the other developed countries of the world here.